me and you, yeah. How are you, my friend? I see you, my brother. How do you do, my friend? See my sister.
How's the fuel situation in your area? I don't know where you are. No, for those of you in Nigeria, this question is for those of you in Nigeria. Particularly, you know, in Lagos. If you have fuel, let me know. But that's the, you know, thing a number of people are talking about. And since 2021, I think, the federal government has ramped up conversations around conversion to compressed natural gas for vehicles. And a number of vehicles are already using them. But there have been concerns, and there are concerns. And hey, there are those who talk about a number of significant disadvantages, that natural gas vehicles may not match the speed performance of gasoline-powered vehicles, that large tanks that you may need space for a large storage tank that can reduce your trunk space, you know, the boot of your car, that's what you'd call it here. Lower performance, the natural gas vehicles may have lower mileage efficiency due to additional weight of the gas tank. Natural gas refueling stations are less common than traditional ones. Despite its abundance, natural gas is still a non-renewable fuel source, and so many other things, including high conversion costs. Of course, the federal government is doing its bit, but then perhaps we have our own also to do. Let's have conversations this morning around the viability of CNG vehicles with Dr. Kayode Okpaifa, Executive Director, Center for Sustainable Mobility and Access Development. He joins us here in the studio. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
We also have Mr. Michael Oluwagbemi, who is the Project Director and CEO of the Presidential Compressed Natural Gas Initiative. He joins us virtually. Thank you, Mr. Oluwagbemi, for joining us this morning. Okay, I believe that we'll get him later. So, well, let me begin with you, Dr. Okpaifa. This conversation has been on since like circa 1997. So, what's your take on the fears? Maybe I should ask you first of all, how far so far? How well do you see this being embraced? What are the challenges that you're seeing and all of that?
Okay, thank you very much, and good morning. Let me join you in commiserating with the victims of the building collapse in Jos and those who are injured, and to just hope that we'll find the way around this collapsing, especially during the rainy season. Going to the what I found with this discussion, let me start by saying that there is no option now worldwide, that we just have to move forward. As technology improves, so also is the world going towards sustainability, especially when it comes to energy sources. Now, the CNG discussion is centered around, I will put it like 3 E's. You need to look at energy security and energy sustainability. In terms of Nigeria, energy security is key. Energy sustainability is also key. Then you have economic sustainability. Then you have environmental correctness. When you look at those 3 issues, the world is moving from fossil fuel to renewable energy and much more less polluting form of energy. So that brings the issue of whether you stay with fossil fuel, you stay with natural fuel, or you go electric, or you go solar, or all those other options. So in the next future, in the next 5 years, the whole world is moving towards these directions, and we have to move as well. Are we late? It's better late than never. So whether we like it or not, then on the economic front, it is cheaper to go that route because it is abundant, it's available. On safety side, it is safer. And also, it reduces emissions. And what that does is it makes life better. So it is the reality now. Are we doing enough? Yes. Will we have done much more than now? Yes. But do we have an option now? Really, I don't think we have that much option than to move. Some countries in the world will stop producing vehicles. Some manufacturers will stop producing vehicles that use petrol in the next 5 years. Some countries have also come up with vehicle standards that says for public transportation, vehicles that runs on petrol will no longer be allowed. We are also just ramping up our production capacity in the area of vehicle manufacturing. So the earlier, the better. We have the gas. They take the gas from there. Most of these countries I'm talking about don't even have the gas that we have in abundance. They don't even have the fuel, the fossil fuel. They get them from us. But they have moved. And the world is going to leave us behind if we don't join. On the economic scene, believe me, it keeps more money in the pocket. It's cheaper to run this kind of vehicles. It's cheaper to use this kind of fuel as your energy source for your mobility equipment. So it's going to keep more money in people's pocket, and it's going to make the economy of the world and the economy of Nigeria even better.
But how about the disadvantages? One of which recently people talked about the proneness to explosions.
That's not correct. And I will explain. Now, compressed natural gas is made up of methane. Methane is CH4. I mean, for those who understand chemistry, that is one carbon, 4 hydrogen. If you talk of LPG, that is the cooking gas. Those are the ones that are prone to explosions. Those ones are made of propane and butane.
But you're not unaware of the recent occurrences.
I'm going to use it. I just want to give the background for people to understand that it is the carbon chain and the hydrogen chains, the components that make these gases that make them different. One is compressed gas into gas. One is liquefied gas, that it is liquid pressured, and that is the LPG. Now, because of the nature of methane, I want to use the language that people understand. The cylinder that contains a CNG is special cylinder. It is by extrusion made, and there is no explosion in the incidents at Ogun State. What you had was, the team was carrying skids. You notice that the skids, none of them went busted. Do you notice that? None of them got busted. What you had was there was a leak in one of the 4 cylinders. It was that leak that caught fire. Now, just oppose that to the incidents in front of beside Sheraton Hotel some time ago, where a gas, something carrying the LPG, got leaked, and the gas went in the air and got exploded and affected that restaurant beside. I think that's Opic restaurant. Now, what you have is CNG is lighter. So when there is a leak or release, what CNG will do is that it will disappear into the atmosphere faster compared to when you have LPG. So we need to differentiate between LPG, the one that we use in cooking in the house, and CNG. CNG is lighter. It's made of one carbon chain, while LPG is made of butane, propane, and those ones are C4 and C5. They are heavier carbon sources. So it is even safer. And the nature of the cylinder is much more, is safer than when you have...
Which leads me to the question of space.
Okay,
most of the examples that we've seen, they put the tanks in the trunks.
That's correct.
So,
yeah, the issue of space is a matter of perception, because the one we have been using before also uses space. That is your tank.
Well, so I don't see the tank.
No,
I don't see that space,
I'm saying that it's an issue. It's an issue. You're right. It's an issue. But the space in my trunk, in my vehicle, in the boot, if I use the description, in the boot, how much of those spaces do you really use? For those who use spaces, yeah, it will be an issue for them. But for me and regular people, who do public transportation, yeah, you might consider the space. But what, as if it is a brand new design, that will have been taken care of. But if it is for conversion, you're going to lose that space. That is for sure. But the question is, for the cost of money you save, for the safety you carry about, and for the sustainability me and you will enjoy from it, it is better to sacrifice that space for this value. Yes, the cylinder has to occupy because it is a conversion. But if it is a brand new vehicle, they will have considered that into the design. I saw a brand new tricycle. You know, I don't like tricycle that much. And the thing is just under the seat. So it's not occupying any unusual space. So I think that will come with brand new. But for conversion, yes, you are going to lose some amount of space in whatever you have. But that space is what you can actually trade off.
Okay, let's see if if our guests on that have guests in the virtual space is with us now. Mr. Oluwagbemi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Wonderful. Good morning. We can hear you loud and clear. So please tell us how far so far, especially concerning this initiative, the Presidential Compressed Natural Gas Initiative. How far so far?
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me on your program. I want to use this opportunity also to commiserate with all Nigerians on with respect to the recent incident in Plateau State. And I wish all the people and government of Plateau State all the best as we try to combat the issues surrounding issues concerning building collapses, and we get to it very quickly. With respect to the compressed natural gas, it's very important for us to understand that Nigeria is a gas country that happens to have oil. For far too long, Nigeria has depended on the inferior product, which is crude oil. And even that, we are not a crude oil refining country. So not only have we failed to refine crude oil, but we then import and subsidize it, effectively subsidizing unemployment and importing poverty. What we are asking us to do, what the president is asking us to do with the compressed natural gas initiative, is to move Nigeria towards a gas future. A future where Nigeria is using the product which is so much blessed with, the largest gas reserves in Africa, that can last us over 100 years with respect to what is already found. And also a natural gas reserve that we control the pricing such that Nigerians are not paying any price for issues around international relations with respect to crude oil that we currently do at the pump. We also have more energy security and more reliability. As the previous speaker has spoken, natural gas is cheaper, it's cleaner, it's safer, and more reliable. These are attributes of natural gas that compel the president to move Nigeria towards using CNG, not just for industries and power, as we already utilize the natural gas for, but to begin to use it for transportation. For the presidential CNG initiative, our mandate was 3. When the president inaugurated the initiative last year, October, was 1, that we should incentivize the adoption of CNG across Nigeria. That 2, we should close the funding gap with respect to the infrastructure for distribution and the availability of compressed natural gas across Nigeria with respect to vehicles and transportation. And lastly, to help engender and develop a regulatory framework for natural gas adoption for vehicular transportation. I would say that we've done very well in the last 6 months. When we first started, there were just 7 conversion centers in Nigeria that we could boast of, that we could accredit. So today we have well over 123 of them. When we first started this program, there were less than 12 dispensing stations for multiple vehicles. As we speak, currently there are over 100 of them under development. And we've launched about 35 of them in the last 2 months alone. NNPC launched 6 just last week. NIPCO is launching 9 of them. BOVAS is launching 8. Several private companies are beginning to come into the sector to invest in the sector. Mother stations were just 23 of them where we started, and most of these mother stations were primarily catering to the power sector. Today we have well over 30 mother stations and an additional 18 under development either by NNPC or its partners, as well as related partners. So that speaks a lot with respect to the progress we are making on the ground when it comes to the adoption of CNG vehicles. In addition to that, the federal government, the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, have actually gone achieved significant steps with respect to encouraging this adoption. The Ministry of Finance, utilizing 100 billion naira from the Palliative Fund, have been able to order well over 5,500 regular platforms, both tricycles and buses, that are already well on ground. Some of them are now going to be deployed in the next week or so. In addition to that, over 21,000 conversion kits have been acquired. And we're beginning to pilot that. We launched that.
Mr. Oluwagbemi, if you can hear me well, we hear you.
Yes.
But I'm looking at a document here that dates back to 2020. And it was one in which it's actually included in the bouncing back program of the government of the day, the National Economic Sustainability Plan. One of those was the National Gas Expansion Program. And one of the objectives, the major objective actually, of that plan is to launch a national program to promote domestic use of CNG and support the creation of 1 million jobs. Part of the elements is to implement a detailed CNG penetration plan. And what is interesting is that on the one hand, it was supposed to be implemented by the Ministry of Petroleum Resources and the NNPC, I beg your pardon, yes, NNPCL, now NNPCL. But what I'm looking for in my head, even in the document here, is how the states have embraced it. At the last count, in that plan, it was supposed to start with a 12-state pilot in the 6 geopolitical zones. How are the states faring in that regard? Is this something that the federal government is solely doing, the presidential committee is solely working on, or is it something that there is partnership with the states and the states themselves are coming up with infrastructure to the effect?
Yes, thank you very much. Good question. The reality is that the plan which you just mentioned was the previous plan under the immediate past administration. When President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came into office and working with the steering committee, through the steering committee, we have put together a different plan that is more realistic and more practical. The current plan calls for the expansion from the current, what we call the 5 primary CNG states, where CNG is widely available, which is Lagos, Ogun, Rivers, Kogi, and FCT. And to build forward from those states to expand towards the immediate surrounding states and ensure penetration through the mass transit sector. But those states also have a key role to play, as you've already mentioned, because mass transit, if we do not forget, is a primary responsibility of state governments. And so we are working collaboratively with the state government. For example, in Ogun State, the governor had invested in buses. In Lagos, Lagos had co-invested with Axela and the former Oando Axela to invest in CNG buses as well that are widely deployed, as well as with companies like Femadec. Even in states that are surrounding these immediate states, for example, FCT is also deploying some clean buses as well. But even in the immediate surrounding states, we are beginning to now expand beyond these 5 primary states to 10 states through what we call our refueling expansion program. That is expanding the footprint of CNG from these 5 primary states to an additional 10. And we are collaborating with state governments to achieve that. In Kwara State, on May 29, we launched the first refueling stations under this program. And the state government contributed significantly, not just to providing the site, but to also provide the direct support to the private company that is doing that in Kwara State when we launched in Ilorin. In coming days, we'll be launching similar programs in other states, including Enugu, in Abia, as well as in Port Harcourt in Rivers State. We'll be doing the same thing in the MENA, where the governor of the state have already acquired 200 CNG buses, but we're going to be providing a refueling site. So you are seeing a state-federal government collaboration along the lines of expanding the CNG footprint nationally. But even beyond state and federal government, it's actually the private sector. And the president was very clear from day one that our job is not to replace the private sector's initiative. At the end of the day, business should be in the business of doing business. And so what we are trying to do as an initiative is to be a catalyst, such as we are the one enabling business to do business, the business of CNG. Because even all the gasoline stations you have today in Nigeria, most of them, if not all of them, are owned by the private sector. But the private sector is being incentivized. In this area, the federal government in December, through the committee working with the Federal Ministry of Finance, announced the waiver for the sector. So there's not just an import duty waiver, there's also a VAT waiver that was declared for the sector that have then attracted well over $50 million of investment since December. Okay. Beyond that, in the month of March, the federal government also published concessionary gas pricing for the sector, such that auto CNG is being priced much.
At the end of the day, Mr. Oluwagbemi, it's what experiences people have that will make all the difference. Well, Dr. Kwefa, I mean, you have, wherever you go, you always come back to Lagos, so we can always call you a Lagos boy like the president. But the question that I want to ask you here is, the experience people have or have had in accessing the CNG, the conversion costs, for instance, is humongous. There are those who say it is something in the region of 200,000 to 300,000 to convert your vehicle from from petrol-powered to CNG-powered. That's a lot of money in this economy, in this particular economy.
Yeah, I agree with you. The issue of accessibility also has to do with affordability. And government, to my knowledge, has been doing a lot, just like Engineer Mike said, to make sure it is available, it is also affordable. And the first thing is what you mentioned, the National Gas Commercialization Project, which has focus on extending the gas pipelines all across the country, the AKK, the Nigeria-Morocco, the AHL, the OB3, and all those gas projects that were commissioned sometimes around May. And also, like he said, we started seeing the stations, the gas stations, because we've seen one in Ilasa Maja recently. They've done about 12 recently. And all these are what the people need to adopt or to accept. Now, coming to cost, yes, the initial cost is much more than people can imagine. But the reality is that it becomes cheaper over a period of 12 months because whatever you must have spent in acquiring the conversion system, you get back in the cost. When you compare 600 naira versus 200 to 250 naira per same quantity of efficiency, and you just suppose that as to what you save over a period of 1 year, you see that you have gained close to about $1 million, most likely. Now, in order to make people to adopt it, the government, through the presidential committee headed by Engineer Michael Oluwagbemi, has come up with a scheme that gives 50% discount to people who wants to convert their vehicle. And I also understand you have almost 100% discount, at least for now, for the conversion kit for people in commercial vehicle, because it is the people in the public transportation sector that should first adopt to make the greatest impact, and also for government vehicles. Yeah, the initial cost is a limitation, but we must not allow a limitation to allow us to get to our eventual capacity.
I'm refraining myself, Dr. Kwefa, from putting you on the spot. But let me ask you, how many state governors have their vehicles powered by CNG?
Okay, I can tell you I know for sure Ogun State. As you can see, on coming here, I saw a big, they call it BRT buses in Nigeria. This mass transit buses, Ogun State colored, and it says I am CNG powered. The last time I was in Kaduna, that was around May 15. I also saw a tricycle that says CNG powered, and I know these are.
I'm actually talking about the state government.
Now, when it now comes to Lagos, Lagos State Governor just announced that before December, we'll start seeing about 2,000 CNG vehicles are in the process.
I'm talking about their own official vehicles, Dr. Kwefa.
No, I don't work for state government. But I can tell you that the program that is ongoing now, this CNG initiative program, as a component that new government vehicles are now to be CNG powered, and many state government, I know Kwara State has committed. I know Kaduna. I was at the Kaduna stakeholder, the Northern Nigeria stakeholder event. Kaduna is committed. I know Gombe state government is committed to this, and they've started making moves. Which other state was it? Nasarawa state government is also. You may not start seeing the effect until it is made public, but many of our states that has the CNG gas station infrastructure have started making effort. I also add, when we had the Lagos State, Lagos Southwest stakeholder forum, I also had interaction with the representative of the Commissioner for Energy in Lagos State, who also mentioned many of the things Lagos State government is doing to encourage through Ibile oil and gas. You know, Lagos State government through Ibile oil and gas to encourage the production. So if you don't have the stations all over the country, you cannot just be converting your vehicle or procuring. But I know, as a directive from the federal government, is that all new vehicles purchased will have to be CNG powered. And I know, I can tell you this, that I know that many of the state governments are already entering your studio. I got a call from Cross River State, from the Ministry of Transportation, asking about some of the questions they've asked me to help them intervene in. And the question I asked is that you confirm availability of gas, and they've confirmed they have gas. So the state government most of the state governments are.
It's actually the place I'm going, because if the
so we are in the adoption stage now.
If the state governments have adopted, to use your word, it'll be easier for us to see. Okay, our leaders are already doing it, so we are getting examples from them. Mr. Oluwagbemi, perhaps I'll ask you the same question. At the federal level, I remember, and I'll always make reference to this, that Mr. Ben Akabo, is a DG budget officer at some point, said that there are more than 1,500 ministries, departments, or about 1,500 ministries, departments, and agencies of the federal government. If this adoption is to go anywhere, it'll be good to see the example from them. So how many of them would you say have adopted CNG for their own official vehicles? Then Nigerians can begin to say, okay, well, our leaders are using them again already, so why don't we adopt it as well?
Yeah, so to your question, I can say that we are beginning to see significant adoption by government institutions. Nonetheless, because the president himself actually directed that going forward, the minimum required vehicle that will be approved by the Federal Executive Council will be CNG enabled, as we saw from the announcement in the second week of May, when various vehicles were actually stepped down for approval at the FEC level once they were proposed, because the federal government, under the insistence of Mr. President, insisted that these have to be CNG enabled. So currently we've seen customs, we've seen FRSC, among several agencies, even the FCT, gone ahead to acquire CNG vehicles or acquiring CNG vehicles as we speak. The Nigerian Army undertaking a CNG vehicle conversion, which we led 30 of the vehicles. And I have to say the Nigerian Army is the biggest spender in the federal government of Nigeria. You consider the fact that the Ministry of Defense has the biggest budget, and the Nigerian Army constitutes easily 60-70% of that expenditure. So if the Nigerian Army is the biggest spender in the federal government of Nigeria as a unit, and they're already doing conversions and they're looking at acquiring additional CNG vehicles, you can be rest assured that where the Army leads, others follow, and that the government is very serious about CNG adoption. Beyond that, if you recall that when we first started this program, we also made sure that the State House staff, in October last year, we donated 2 vehicles to the State House staff for commuting that are currently using CNG. I checked with the Permanent Secretary of the State House, and they are very well appreciative of this. How these have lowered their cost of operation, because CNG vehicles operate at about 70% saving relative to petrol vehicles. So this is not just a tool of just demonstrating, oh, federal government is using CNG or your leader is using CNG, so you should use it. It's also a tool talking about budget and the budget office that you just mentioned.
Talking about budget, my apologies. Talking about budget, how much will the federal government save if you may not even be able to talk specifics, but percentage-wise, in terms of budgeting, how much will be saved if anyone would convert to CNG on the long run, as Dr. Okwefa said?
Yeah, so I wouldn't just say federal government, I would say for anybody. So a vehicle currently using about 50,000 naira a week, let's say 40 to 50,000 naira a week, we'll begin to use about 8,000 naira a week. So you're talking about 70%
how much?
Out of the,
how much?
Yes, that much, because you're talking about 230 naira per kg, equivalent GG, relative to 650 to almost 850 naira today for petrol, right? And almost 1,200, 1,300 for diesel. So there's a vast difference between 230 naira and 650 naira. So that savings goes directly to you. So if you consider the fact that you're doing about 30,000, 35,000 naira of savings a week for an average car user, not even a mass transit, but a mass transit vehicle, the savings is about 70,000 naira a week, which will translate to almost 240,000 naira a month and almost 3 million naira a year, right? And you can imagine what that savings means for them in terms of increased profit. Even if they decide to just share 50% of that with the public and they keep 50% of the profit margin to themselves, they're taking home about 1.5 million naira a year. So for mass transit vehicles, for private vehicles, there's savings all around. And all of these savings are just the personal savings. The greater savings is the savings to the Nigerian people. Today, there's what we call an implicit subsidy, because it's an opportunity cost for Nigerians selling its crude oil for the use of domestic instead of using it for CNG. All our neighbors around us, I was in Cameroon about 3 weeks ago, and fuel is selling in Cameroon for about 1,600 naira per liter. In Nigeria, we're selling at 650 naira per liter. In Niger, it's going for 1,700. In Benin Republic, it's going for 1,400. So we are better off selling what we are currently utilizing in terms of petrol to our neighbors, and then we use gas, which is more cheaper. So the implicit subsidy that Nigeria gives to each commercial vehicle every year is about 6 to 7 million naira per year.
Okay.
That's why the federal government have done the calculation to say that we are better off giving them free kits so that they convert, so that we stop giving that 6 to 7 million naira implicit subsidy.
Okay.
And then they will be cheaper.
A good one. I can see that Dr. Okwefa already has his pen and paper and he's doing some math here. Okay, you've also done some math, so what will we save?
Yeah, without being too specific, but from literature and what people within the mobility sector and the NI sector are projecting is about 10 trillion within Lagos, FCT, Kano, and Rivers State alone annually.
That will be saved.
That's the economy will be saved.
10 trillion.
About 10 trillion naira. If you consider, just like if we consider the number of vehicles in circulation in use, and the especially in the public transportation sector, and you multiply this with the amount of savings that will be in people's pockets, that will be in the efficiency in the economy, is about 10 trillion in just 4 states.
Now, you also talked about...
I'm not talking of the entire country, because those 4 states account for close to 40% of the entire vehicles in Nigeria.
We have less than 2 minutes, but the viability that we're talking about here, the challenge for people that they're trying to put in their heads is, if I do this, how will I not be stranded? The CNG tanks spaces are so few and far between.
Okay, let me say this. It's going to be, if you do conversion, it's going to be dual. So if your CNG fuel is low, you have option of petrol. And so there's no strand, you can't be stranded. So when you move, and as the government ramps up this infrastructure in terms of the stations, those fares are maybe less. So I don't think people should have this way. Then on the issue of viability, again, is the assurance that the government is incentivizing the public transportation sector. So once the public transportation sector embraces it, it's going to encourage investors to invest in the... I'm also thinking about it. Putting up the gas station. You have one in Arepo here. It's been here for about 3-4 years. There's another one at Agidingbi now. The last Amaja is on. And I think Lagos is having almost about 12 or more than that now. And I don't understand, Ibile Gas is also thinking of putting at many of the stations. You have pipelines along Agege Muto Road, you have along Ikorodu Road, you have in Lagos Island. So all those areas where you have the gas pipelines, that means the gas can get there, it can be compressed because the gas has to first be compressed before they can be discharged into the vehicle, into the skids. So I think the viability is not the issue. What is the issue now is the adoption. It's for people to adopt it. Now, when you adopt it, I spoke with one of my partner who told me, who also asked me a question, how does he get into this thing? Because a friend told him he has CNG and he has a petrol gas tanks now. So he's not even talking about scarcity. So the two are at full tank. He switches when he sees where there's no queue.
So you can also do that?
Yes,
hybrid.
Hybrid. It's going to come as hybrid if you do conversion. So it's a win-win.
Okay.
It's just the adoption that is the key issue now.
Well, Mr. Lagbemi, just, okay, we're out of time, but let me just ask you this. Incentives for investors. Dr. Kwefa has been talking about, he wants to get into the business as well. I think maybe I'll go talk to a bank as well to get into it. But what's the incentive for the businessman? What are they, okay, make us an elevator pitch. So somebody wants to adopt, someone wants to get into the business. What's the viability for the fellow who wants to get into it?
Yes, the federal government has already rolled out a number of incentives, including a VAT and import duty waiver for the sector. We've also rolled out incentives for the midstream side when we give concessionary gas pricing that allows recovery and recovery of investment, return on investment to be much higher than it used to be, such that investments in the midstream and downstream side, there can be faster break-even points because of lower input gas cost. This was announced by NMDPRA in April. In addition to this, the federal government have, of course, also begun to do this demand stimulation, be it by ensuring that federal MDAs acquire CNG-enabled vehicles, or ensuring that the sector itself begins to grow, either in form of refueling as well as enhancing platforms that utilize CNG. These are incentives for the sector. These are incentives for the businessmen that will come into the sector. And I can assure them that currently the return on investment of the sector is quite high relative to that of petrol, that's PMS and diesel, but it's going to continue to remain that way because we believe in a consistency of policy. It's not just about ensuring that it's attractive right now and then changing course down the road. For example, the concessionary gas pricing put in place by NMDPR is assured for the next 5 years and renewable for another 5. So you at least can trust that this will be available to the businessman for the next 10 years. So I think this is something that is quite commendable. And like I said, Nigeria is ready for business. We look forward to businessmen and investors coming into the sector, investing in the upstream angle in terms of gas supply, the midstream when it comes to mother stations, daughter stations, as well on the downstream side.
Mr. Lagbemi, if you can hear me. Just a second. On that same issue, my apologies. We have a number of car manufacturing vehicles in country, and Dr. Kwefa, you speak to that as well. We have a number of organizations in the country that produce vehicles, some of them supported by state governments, such as Lagos State supporting one like that. We have a number of them, in the southeast, in the southwest, and, all over the place like that. What conversations are we having with them to facilitate this? Because I'm looking at something that I believe you are talking about in the long run. It's a conversation for the long haul. So are we having conversations with them that can encourage them to sustain, the business and sustain CNG-powered vehicles exclusively in the country from their factories?
Absolutely. So under the first acquisition that was done by the federal government through the Federal Ministry of Finance, 4 automobile companies located in Nigeria have been engaged to do the acquisition of the CNG buses and tricycles. We opened the factory for the tricycle we launched it in May 2030, 2024, in Shagamu, where the CNG tricycles are being coupled and assembled, and will soon even be done. They'll be doing much more higher local manufacturing. We did the factory inspection tours of the Meccano factory that's also located along the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, as well as the Kojo factory located in Onitsha. where the Homer brand of buses that were donated to the State House are being produced. So we are engaged with the local manufacturers. The likes of Innocent are already doing CNG buses, and some of them are being supplied to the Nigerian Army, as well as the private sector. So we know even Nord in Lagos is doing a range of CNG trucks as well as CNG sedans. These companies are doing their best, and with the incentives that we are provided, especially with respect to the waiver, import duty waiver, as well as the VAT waiver for the sector, we think they can grow. We also know that the demand that we're providing to them also allows them to continue to sustain their growth. But ultimately, the biggest policy of the federal government that is going to enable the auto industry is not even the CNG program by itself. It is the financial, the credit economy that the president has spoken to a lot about, that will actually stimulate and ignite the auto sector. So if you think about it, their counterparts overseas are not waiting for anybody.
Absolutely.
They're out with cash.
It's an endless conversation, really. But let me take Dr. Kwefa's comments on the same issue before we close.
Let me say that I'm not too sure. I couldn't hear Dr. Engineer Mai very well. There is also a credit option. You can get the conversion kit on credit basis, and as you buy your CNG gas, you pay back. So if you don't have the broker, that's the option I'm opting for. I'll just get the thing on credit and pay as I buy my fuel. Now, on the issue of the car manufacturing, I was privileged to attend the launching of one tricycle plant just a few kilometers away from your station, where they're manufacturing CNG. I'm aware Meccano Auto is doing CNG, Jet Motors is doing CNG, Innocent is doing CNG, Ashok Leyland Automobile in Lagos is also doing CNG. Lareshitu Motors just commissioned their that they also into CNG. So the automobile industry is also aware of the need, because that's the direction now. It doesn't mean we'll not use petrol or diesel vehicles, but it has come to be part of the major energy mix. And in fact, it's for energy security.
Do you see a time, lastly, where there is a policy of government that says CNG or nothing?
We're getting to that stage, because already in Europe, I think it is Sweden, Australia or so, they've already taken a decision that no more petrol. It's either CNG or electric. So whether we like it or not, by getting close to 2030, they're going to start hearing those kind of policies.
Well, I have to thank you for this conversation this morning, educating us on the viability of CNG vehicles in the country. Dr. Kayode Okwefa is Executive Director of the Center for Sustainable Mobility and Access Development, as well as Engineer Michael Oluwagbemi, who is Project Director and CEO of the Presidential Compressed Natural Gas Initiative. He joined us all the way from Ilorin. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here this morning.
Pleasure. Thanks.
So, we're taking a short break now, and one of the things that's bugged our country for a long time is the issue of corruption, to the point that the UNODC is talking and the EFCC is still talking. We'll talk about that when we return.